Hey everyone, it's Dan, and today we're going to repair these crash bars on this BMW G310R. Now, a couple months back, I dropped this bike on the right side, which scuffed up the crash bars, brake lever, and also the bar end. I've already replaced the bar end and the brake lever, so this is the last thing in terms of the repairs. So the goal here is, I'll try to do this while it's actually mounted on the bike to save myself a bunch of work of removing it. I'm going to cover up all the bodywork to make sure there's no overspray from the paint, and I'll use a wire brush to clean off all the rust and to also smooth out the metal and make this as seamless as possible. This job's about a 2, maybe a 3 out of 5 in terms of difficulty. It really depends on how comfortable you are working with power tools. You will need to allocate a better part of the day for it just because you'll need to apply multiple layers of paint. As far as the tools go, I ended up using a drill with a wire brush, so this made removing some of the rust and cleaning up the surface much easier. My grooves, so the scratches, were actually pretty deep into the metal, so the wire brush is not enough to get them all out, so I ended up resorting to using a grinder to shave it off really gently to make a nice smooth surface, and then finally finished it off with sandpaper. For sandpaper, you are going to want to use a couple of different grits, so start with a rough one like a 60 or an 80, and then finish it off with something higher. The highest one that I had was 120, which ended up working fine. If I have something even finer than that, that'll be even better. You also want a drop cloth to protect the bike if you decide not to remove the crash bars from it. Some masking tape. I like using gloves to keep the paint off my hands, and then finally the paint. So I ended up using a flat black Rust-Oleum, which is a primer and a paint in one, and I ended up applying 3 coats of the paint. So step 1 here is going to be to cover up the bike using this painter's drop cloth. I want to make sure that I minimize any dust or paint that gets on any of the motorcycle. So the first step will be to clean this up. I'm going to use a wire brush and a drill to smooth it out, remove all the rust, and also blend the existing paint with the bare metal so that when it's painted over, you're not going to know anything was there. All right, so I did about as much as I could with the wire brush. It definitely removed all the rust, but there's still a bunch of grooves in the metal because they're a little bit deeper. So the next step, I'll use an actual file to smooth these out, make sure it's nice and round, and then give it one more go with the wire brush before the paint. All right, so this was taking forever using just a hand file. So I'm going to opt for the nuke option and actually use an electric grinder with a cutoff wheel. So you want to be very careful. Make sure that you don't break the wheel on the grinder, so make sure it's in good shape. And also when you shave this off, do just a little bit at a time. If you cut into it too deep, remember these tubes are hollow, so if you cut into it, you're screwed. So you want to just do gently, one small layer at a time until everything is nice and smooth. Also make sure you have your goggles and gloves for protection. Here we go. All right, so this is looking really good. The next step will be to go back to the wire brush and then smooth it out. The idea here is to make it as seamless as we can. right, so that's about as good as I'll be able to do with the wire brush. Next step will be to finish it off with some sandpaper. So I'm going to start with a 60 grit, go down to 80, and then to a fine one to try and smooth it out. All right, so I really like the way that this turned out. It really wasn't so bad to get it nice and smooth. You do want to make sure that you smooth out, especially the edges between the paint. So as you run your hand or finger over it, you don't want to be able to feel that, that bump between the painted surface and the non-painted surface. So feel it out. Helps if you actually don't look at it. It's not perfectly ideal, but it's going to be more than good enough. It's about as clean as the rest of these bars are, so I'm happy and ready to proceed to the next step. So next up, I do have this auxiliary light mounted to here, so I want to go ahead and remove it, set it aside, and I want to pay special attention to make sure that everything is taped up around the bike now, because the step after this is going to be to paint it, and I want to save myself some work and not have to remove this from the motorcycle. So I'm just snipping some of the zip ties off of here. And I'll just remove the whole mount. All right, and I'll just set this guy aside. So next up, I just want to wipe down the surfaces that I'm going to be painting. So I'll probably draw some distinct lines with masking tape to cut it off over here, through here, and then near the motorcycle. So I'll paint this whole section right here. That way it looks like it's just one continuous paint job and not patchy. So wipe down whatever dust you might have on here. All right, so true to fashion, 90% of the work of painting actually has nothing to do with painting. It has to do with prepping for the paint job. So now we're finally ready for the last step. I'm going to use this Rust-Oleum 2-in-1, so it's a paint and a primer. I've already shaken the can up quite a bit to make sure that it's ready to go. The key thing here is to apply several very thin coats. You don't want to put too much paint on there or it's going to drip and make a mess for you. So that should do it for the first coat. I'm going to wait for a few minutes to let it dry a little bit and then apply a few more coats. So it's been about 5 minutes. Time for coat number 2. All right, so 2 coats down, 1 more to go. It already looks smooth. I can barely tell where the repaired area was, so I'm sure that the 3rd coat will be more than enough. Right now, I just got to make sure that I don't overdo it and don't cause any drips. And that should be it. All right, so I let the paint dry overnight, took off the plastic, and taking a closer look at this, I really couldn't be happier with the way this job turned out. Unless you knew what to look for, you really have no idea that there was any kind of repair happening. So I do have to say that I'm very, very happy with the performance of these crash bars. They prevented any kind of damage to any of the plastic bodywork. which literally saved me hundreds, if not more than $1,000. These guys get very, very expensive, especially from BMW. So kudos to that. Best part is this is actually the No brand that I bought from Amazon, so they're pretty cheap compared to the brand names. Now the installation for them was a little bit of a bear just because they didn't quite line up, so it took a little bit of muscling to get them into place, but once installed, they're definitely doing a great job. So I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.